Now in this video we will be looking at bends and how to do them. There are various types of bends and there are various little tips we can do to make our bends easier and make them sound better. The first thing we'll look at is what fingers we use when we are bending. Now on our left hand, if you're right-handed, our left hand is going to be doing all the bending. We're going to do this in the key of E major. So I'm going to use the E major scale. The first place we're going to start is the 13th fret on the 3rd string, which is a G sharp note. Now, as I said, there are various fingers we can use. We can use a 1-finger bend. We can use 2 fingers to bend the string. We can use 3 fingers, or we can use 4 fingers. Depending on the amount we're going to be bending will probably depend on which finger we're using. Also, where the bend is in our solo or our riff from and to will depend on which finger we use. Now the bending technique itself, I'm just going to start with 1 finger to show this. We're placing the finger, as we always will, close to the next fret wire. We're plucking the string. And then we're going to bend the string. We're literally just going to push a string either up or down. It doesn't matter which way you bend it, as it's still changing the string in the same way. We're just moving it either up or down. So I normally will go up, but there will be times when I will bend down as well. We hold the string in place. We're pushing down a normal amount. We're not pushing any harder into the fretboard. We're not pushing any lighter. Just the normal amount we would press. But the point is we need to keep it pressed in as we're pushing the string up or down. If we release the pressure, we lose that note. So it's really important that we keep the finger pressed down into the fretboard still as we're bending. And there we go. We can hear the note change as we bend the string. And that's the whole point of bending. We're changing the note from what it originally is into something else, depending on how far we bend that string. As I said, we're starting off with a G sharp, but if we wanted to make that into an A note, which would be the next note in our scale, we've got to bend that half a tone. I'll come back to tones in a moment to explain what they are and how far we're bending them. But you can see how far we have to push that string until we hit the next fret or the next note. It is still quite a way we've got to push that. So that's why we use more than 1 finger. Perhaps using 2 fingers would make this even easier. Maybe even using 3 fingers. We can even use 4 fingers. Personally, it's not something I really do. I think a lot of guitarists are the same. Don't tend to use the 4th finger so much unless it's a particularly big bend. So there we can see using different fingers can make it easier to do bends, particularly when we're doing bigger bends. So a tone, 1 tone would be the same as moving up by 2 frets on the guitar, and half a tone would be the same as moving up by 1 fret on the guitar. So if I take our E major scale still, I'm going to use our F sharp note for this one. If I want to make it hit the G sharp note, that's 2 frets away, so therefore I need to bend it 1 whole tone. I'm going to use 3 fingers to do this. And we can see it's quite some distance we've got to push that string up for 1 whole tone. If it was only half a tone, it would be slightly easier because we're only going up by 1 fret this time. So again, I'll go back to my G sharp note and I'll bend that into an A note. So we can see we don't need to bend as far for this one, but we're still moving the string a fair distance. Now, we can go further than 1 tone. We could even go into 1.5 tones. If I use our F sharp note again, I'm going to bend this right up until we hit the A note, which is 1.5 tones away from the F sharp. So this is the note I'm hitting. We can really see the strings move when we do those kind of distances, can't we? Now, you will see some guitarists go even further than 1.5 tones. You may see 2 tones, you may even see 2.5 tones, but a little tip for that, you may want to use some very light gauge strings for that, as the heavier the gauge string, the harder it will be to bend. So if we're doing some really big distances, then we may want some light strings on there, some 10s or 9 gauge strings. When we're bending that far, because that really is some distance. Typically I will use 11 gauge strings, and typically I don't bend any further than 1.5 notes, but we know if we do want to go further, we've got to push up much further with our bend. This is where our 3-finger bends come in place. Now, I've been doing those bends quite slowly just to show how we would do them, but generally we do quite quick bends to really go straight through the notes that aren't in the scale, straight up to the note that is back in the scale. And we always need to use our ears when doing bends. There's no amount of distance that's going to tell us that's a 1-tone bend, that's a 1.5 tone bend. We're using our ears to hear when the note matches the note we want to hit. If we go to our G sharp note again, we're going to hit our A note. So this is a half step or a half tone bend. 1 fret bend. We've got to listen until this note matches this note. So we're bending quite quickly into the next note, and we're using the ear to stop bending when we hear the note we want to hear. Now, we've looked at 1-finger, 2-finger, 3-finger, 4-finger bends, and we've looked at half step bends, half tone bends, 1-tone bends, and 1.5 tone bends. But there are some more bends we can look at as well. First of all, we're going to look at quarter note bends. Now, as the name suggests, we're only bending a quarter of a note. We're really staying within the same note. We're just bending it a bit out of key, really. If I use our G sharp note again, we know our next note, our next fret, would be an A. That would be a half a tone bend. We don't want to hit that note. We're doing a quarter of a bend, so we're doing a bit less than that. Now, generally for quarter note bends, we're not going to linger too much on that note because it's not really in the key. It is bending it out of key a little bit. But we can hear the note changing, but not enough until it hits this note. And there's our quarter note bends. You will hear those quite a lot in music. They do sound very effective, and they are just about staying in our key there, so there's no real issues with using those freely. But like I said, there is one more type of bend we can use. Now we're going to use a unison bend. Now, unison bends mean we're going to play a note on one string. I'm going to play the D sharp note on the E string, which is the 11th fret on the E string. We're going to play that note, but as well as that, we're going to play the note 3 frets away on the B string, which is going to be our C sharp note. And I'm going to bend our C sharp note until it hits our D sharp note. So if we find the D sharp note on that B string, it's 2 frets away. Okay, so therefore if it's 2 frets, it's 1 tone away. And we're going to bend our 3rd finger, which is on our C sharp note. We're going to keep our D sharp note, which is our 1st finger, still. So what happens is our C sharp note will bend into and match our D sharp note. So we'll have 2 D sharp notes, but we're going to hear that note rise as we go through. Let's listen to that. So like we said, we can hear that C sharp bend up into our D sharp note. And that's where we get this unison bend sound, which sounds much bigger than one guitar. It sounds like we've got a couple of guitars playing at once, which sounds really effective in our soloing then. So it's just a quick video on our bends, the different types of bends, the different amounts we can bend, the different fingers we can use. And when we start introducing these into our playing, the more we use them, the more comfortable we become with them, the better they're going to sound, the more natural our leads will sound. We hope this video has helped you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and the notify button so you do know when we post more tutorials to help you learn the guitar. I'm Stephen from the Murphy School of Music. Keep up the practice and we'll see you soon.